Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another Foundation educational webinar. Today's topic is AI and prevailing wage, and we're going to get started here. If our other panelists can join us again with cameras and mics, that would be great. My name is Brian Cancian. I am the Business Development Manager here at Foundation Software. And there's an echo. Somebody has speakers on. I don't know how that is or what's echoing, but now it's not echoing. So maybe we're good. Anyway, again, my name is Brian Cancian. I'm the Business Development Manager here with Foundation. I'd like to welcome you back for another educational webinar. We're excited today to bring you a good conversation on artificial intelligence and how that may affect prevailing wage. Today, we are very excited to have four panelists here to give their take on the industry and how AI may affect it, all coming from various aspects of the prevailing wage sector. We have Brittany Engel, who is the Director of Contractors Edge, Jason Berger, Technical Ops Lead with Alliant Consulting, Nick Nikolak, Director of Ross Britton and Schoenberg, and Stephanie Craighead, who is a prevailing wage expert with Fringe Benefit Optimization. So before we get started on the actual subject at hand, I'd like to have everybody just take a quick minute or two to introduce themselves, give a brief background of your work and thoughts on AI in the prevailing wage arena, and we'll get started with Brittany.
Hi, my name is Brittany Engel. I've been in the prevailing wage Davis-Bacon service contract arena for over 20 years now, working with both union and non-union contractors, assisting them with compliance, maintaining compliance both on their certified payrolls as well as their accounting and payroll. Because as we know, if you don't do it right, then you're fined and penalized no matter what. So we make sure that you guys have the best understanding from day one, $1. And our software that we created, Contractors Edge, is a solution that's designed to help contractors with that, making sure that their fringe benefits are allocated properly, they're selecting the correct wage determinations, and paying the correct wages based upon the classification the employee works in. My thoughts on AI in the prevailing wage space. That is a mixed bag. There are some pros to it, but in general, we see a lot of issues with AI long term. They make mistakes. It happens constantly. And so I think that it has a lot more time and development before it can really become a mainstream product in our space.
Hey guys, my name is Jason Berger. As you said, I lead the technical operations team here at Alliant. Here at Alliant, we help contractors and public agencies navigate the full scope of the prevailing wage compliance. We're in projects all over California, or national, or international. Every project has its nuances and potential pitfalls, and so that's what I'm seeing every day. It's not just a challenge of understanding the rules, it's about how to streamline our internal workflows, and that's where my role really comes in. I'm focused on building out internal systems and processes that make our employees' jobs easier, therefore making our clients and contractors' jobs a lot easier. Sometimes that's structuring data better, maybe improving a workflow. Basically, how can I reduce friction and make everyone's life easier? So how that applies to AI, I believe there is real potential, but it's really not there yet. It's a good tool. It's not a standalone solution. It's not going to be your compliance partner. It does not understand nuance, at least not yet. It does not carry liability. It's not a person, and no one can really rely on it to do that. It's a great tool, but for now, it's all it really is.
My name is Nick Nikolak. I am the managing partner of a law firm named Ross, Britton and Schoenberg. I have been doing prevailing wage audits and litigation for 25 years, um, and helping both union and non-union contractors comply with federal Davis-Bacon laws, state of Ohio prevailing wage law, and prevailing wage laws that are effective in other states. In doing that, I see AI in its infancy, reflecting what Brittany and Jason said. It's got a lot of growing to do before it be like effective in helping contractors comply with prevailing wage law. But I could see some effect in tracking employees' times in different classifications, or helping contractors with paperwork, or in the future determining classifications of work depending on what you're doing. So there is some potential that it could help in the future. It's just not there, in my opinion, yet.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Cricket. I'm excited to be part of this discussion today. By way of background, I've been in the government contracting, employee benefits, and compliance space for more than 20 years. I've been on all sides of the table, so to speak. I've been a contractor, I've been a TPA, broker, consultant, and now co-founder of a company that helps with benefit strategies and fringe tracking. When it comes to AI in prevailing wage space, specifically from my point of interest, which is benefit strategy, it's been in the healthcare space for a while. So hyper automation of systems, a lot of data crunching, recommendations, analytics, underwriting. So I have a little bit different exposure to it. When it comes to prevailing wage, I see some benefits to it, definitely from a benefit strategic standpoint, because there's a lot of data sets, benchmarks, and studies that you can pull together with your specific employee information to get recommendations and insight. But again, from my perspective, an HR perspective, benefits is a personal business. There's a human touch to it. So I don't think it's all the way there from a strategic standpoint, but I think it can give good insight.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. So we're going to stop sharing this screen here. Before we move on to some of the questions for each of our panelists to address, I want to circle back to a few housekeeping items. Many of you are already posting some questions in the question panel. If you aren't familiar with the GoToWebinar platform and you look across the top of your screen, there is an icon that has a question mark on it. If you click that, it'll open up the questions pane. Feel free to type in your questions at that point. We are going to have a Q&A session at the end when we get done with the interview questions for each of our panelists. And that will be it. We'll also be starting a brief poll. It'll ask a question. And if you guys could please just take a second to respond, we'd greatly appreciate that. So again, I want to thank all four of you for joining us today, taking time out of your day to make this event possible for our audience. And we're going to get started. So just want to maybe set the scene here. What are we talking about when we say AI for prevailing wage compliance? Like what tools and technologies are included in artificial intelligence?
Yeah, Brian, I can take that question. So really, when we're talking about AI in the context of prevailing wage, or really in almost any professional environment, number one, we're not talking about science fiction anymore. No robots, no anything like that. But we are talking about systems that can run themselves. So when I think about AI, I think about a growing set of tools that are going to help people do their work more efficiently. So with wage compliance and prevailing wage, that's dealing with large volumes of data and documents and the communication. So there's a bunch of different tools there. There are natural language processors. These interpret human language. They basically can talk to you as if they are kind of a person. They can help maybe pull requirements out of a project spec or something like that. There's machine learning. They are typically used more in marketing, but there is potential there for prevailing wage. they're good at spotting trends and stuff like that. That's what the machine learning's best at. Then there's the one everyone knows about, the generative AI, your chat GPTs, your Claude, all of those. We've probably all experienced working or talking to one of those. They're really helpful for maybe getting your ideas off the ground and kind of getting a starting point, or maybe just chatting with someone about a problem that you have. And then obviously there's automated decision systems. These are kind of just like back end systems that can basically do the work of maybe a temp or an intern or something like that, where maybe we're just moving some data around. Um, there's all different types of tools that could be called AI, that are rightly called AI, I should say. But the thing is that none of them really understand compliance. They're all tools in the trade. And so whether you're using machine learning or natural language processing, or you're just talking to ChatGPT, it's important to remember that you're the expert there and not the tool that you're talking to. So when we're talking about AI, it's a bunch of different things. It's not just ChatGPT. It's really just a layer between a person and work to help reduce the friction and really get their work done faster.
That's really interesting. So Nick, I think maybe we have a question here for you. Given your expertise, what are we talking about when we say prevailing wage compliance, and what might that include?
But it's a variety of things. So when you heard Brittany first introduce herself, Davis Bacon, for instance, that's federal prevailing wage. You have to file certified payroll reports. You have to properly classify your employees as to the work they're performing. You have to pay them appropriately according to the determination that applies to the work. So on a Davis Bacon job, you'll get a wage determination with your contract. That wage determination is going to have four different types of classifications that will apply to the different work that you're performing. You'll have a building, a residential, a heavy, and a highway. You have to first select which one of those four determinations applies, then go to what your employees are performing on the specific job. They're electricians, they're operators, they're laborers, they're plumbers. Find that correct wage determination, pay the wage and the fringe portion properly, take your prevailing wage credits properly, for providing health insurance, pensions, uh, holidays and vacation pay, which now, if they're unfunded plans, you have to get approved prior to the DOL prior to taking any credit. A lot of people need to be doing that, or else they will not allow you to take credit for vacations and holidays at Davis Bacon projects. It's a classification and a proper payment structure is what Davis Bacon is. You get into apprentices who are registered apprentices, who are real apprentices. There's ratio requirements that you have to comply to. There's certain ways to calculate their fringes and wages. So there's a litany of stuff that you have to comply with.
Interesting. Yeah, there's definitely a lot. I know just my experience in implementations with our payroll module and all the variables what our contractors deal with. Um, it's a lot, definitely. So this really, I guess, is geared for anybody. What are some examples of what AI can currently do for contractors right now? And everybody's muted. There we go. Brittany's
I
back.
think, something that Jason had mentioned in his intro was how it can help you with developing policies and procedures, right? So obviously AI, like ChatGPT and things like that, can look at all of the various places on the internet where all the information is stored. They can kind of bring that all in together in one area and tell you, okay, here's how you comply, right? The problem is that that does not catch all of the nuances that are there, right? So if they put together a policy and procedure for any general contractor, but in reality you're a sub of a sub of a sub, and they're telling you, you need to be reviewing your subcontractor certified payroll reports, well, that doesn't apply to you. So it can help you in certain ways, but you have to look at it with the discernment of an actual person and know and understand what your compliance requirements are, knowing that you need to pay the correct wages and you need to classify your employees correctly. Your fringes are not allocated based upon, Joe Blow's allocation over here. It's your specific benefits that you're taking credit for. If you are using an unfunded plan, getting that approval letter before you even step foot on the project, all of those things that AI might not know and might not understand is your specific situation. That's where the human aspect comes in, right? And that's where working with companies and compliance consultants that actually know and understand, one, the law, but how it actually impacts you as the contractor in your day-to-day operations is so important.
Not unlike our GPS when we plug in an address and not realize that it's picking up the same address in a whole separate city until it comes back with a 22-hour drive.
Exactly.
Anyone else
Exactly.
have any thoughts on that? Not the GPS part.
The question was what to be excited about. I think, not to spoil it, but I know a lot of people in this call are probably not as hyped up and excited about the AI. But there are some things I think people can be excited about. I mean, the tool's not there yet, like I said, to be your partner, but it can be a tool. And the cool thing is that it can be a tool at scale. So if you're trying to read, I don't know, if you have a really long 300-page document and you really are just looking for one thing in there, that's a really good use for AI. It's going to save you a ton of time. So stuff like that, where you are maybe spending a lot of time crafting the perfect email, or you are trying to find a way to reach out to find more clients or more jobs, or in our case here at Alliant, we're trying to make sure that our standard operating procedures are the same across the board. And we can help find differences where maybe we're doing something slightly different for California than maybe we are in New York, and maybe we shouldn't be. So things like that are definitely something to look forward to with AI, and as it continues to improve and get better, those things are going to get easier and easier to do. But it's always going to be important to have a human part of the process because still, at the end of the day, it's
Yeah, definitely. And I know for one thing, like what it can do for contractors now, one of the big pushes is in accounts payable automation, right? Just taking some of the repetitive tasks that in-house bookkeepers are doing and trying to get invoices coded and routed and sent out for approvals. And I think a lot of that learning technology can look at those invoices and do a lot of that for the individuals. And that's something that's really exciting, at least to me. I know that's a pain point for a lot of our clients. So anybody else have any examples of what we can currently do with AI in the construction space right now?
I have an example, but it's more on the obviously the fringe and the benefit aspect of the prevailing wage piece. But there's a lot of studies, benchmarks, and data out there on generations and what they prefer and stuff. So matching benefits to workforce demographics. So say you have a workforce that includes a really high percentage of 20 to 28, so that's Gen Z, and looking at your plan utilization and coupling that with the data that AI can analyze for you, it reveals that the enrollment in your high premium PPO plan is really, really low, but you have really high utilization in urgent care and telehealth and mental health. And so knowing that Gen Z mental health support is important to them, flexible health benefit plans, and that they're portable and they like tech-friendly stuff. They like chat bots and things like that. That with that insight, you may change your strategy and offer a lower deductible plan and then put more robust telehealth medicine in and a really good EAP program to support the mental health aspect of it that that generation values based on a lot of the benchmark and data that's already out there. So that's an example where I think it can assist.
That's really important, definitely. So I know Jason spoke to a few things that contractors might be able to be excited about right now. Anybody else have any thoughts on what our attendees here might be able to look at now and get pretty excited about in the AI space? Nick, there you
Yep. I will say, Brian, when we're talking about classifications of work, Like if you use some of the search engine AIs, if you ask it a question of, what union does cement fishing work, or what union does this particular type of pipe laying work, it's not something I would rely on, of course, 100%, but it does spit out an answer sometimes, especially if you put in where you're working. It will point you to a union that would help you select classifications on a wage determination. I would still get my hands on, because with Davis Bacon, for example, we'll just stay with federal prevailing wage. They they assign work to classifications based on historic practice of who claims or performs that work. So that's the same person you'd have to select in the determination in order to pay them the proper rate. There's sometimes you can have an issue where I have laborers who are framing up cement work, right? And they're allowed to do that under their agreement. Then, when it comes to finishing the concrete, that might be a cement mason, classification, and the laborer can't do that. There is some AI right now that at least points you to uh, give you a starting point if you're confused on what classification of work that is. And I'm giving like really simple examples, but there are classifications of work like highway lighting and signalization where you could have three different unions that claim that work. So in the area that you're working, what is the proper union? You should be selecting the proper classification off that wage determination. Uh, and I found that sometimes the AI stuff gives you a starting point for the more simple questions, right?
Right. Yeah, that's really good. Brittany, you unmuted.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, something that we've seen that there's been discussion about in our industry at least is how can AI help with time tracking? So something that a lot of people have discussed is, using Google Glasses or some sort of other safety glasses with AI components built into it, where that AI can recognize the tool or the piece of equipment that that person is using and then assign them to the proper classification based upon the data that AI houses, right? So knowing that the job is in, Los Angeles County in California, and that person is on a, tractor or a backhoe of some sort, putting them in the correct operating group classification and assigning them based upon, okay, is it a federal project? Is it a California project? Is it subject to both? Looking at both different determinations and seeing which wage determination might be applicable. Those are kind of things that we could probably see in the future. I don't feel that AI is there yet, but that's something that probably can we can see probably in the future at some point.
Very cool. So, Jason, given your role, can you maybe talk a little bit about what contractors should be wary of in this space? I know there's a lot of excitement, and we think AI is cool. It can do all these different things. I know it can generate really good songs for us, but what about the pitfalls?
Yeah, it also, if you were on a webinar and needed to organize your notes, it can also do that really well too. I don't have any experience or anything like that. But the thing that contractors should be wary about, and I mean, we've kind of harped on this a bunch of times, is AI does not know the rules. It doesn't know what the rules are about apprentice supervision. If you write a report using AI and that report gets wrong and costs someone some money, AI is not going to pay that bill. You are. You're going to be liable. It doesn't carry any liability. So the biggest thing, the way I could classify it, is having overconfidence in your AI tools. The technology itself is sound, it's good, but it's not a miracle worker. And so the things to be really wary about, if you're asking it to find a craft, you to find the right one, it might find it correctly. You should always ask for links and proof of what the AI is telling you in all cases, but especially in wage compliance. There's so many very similar sounding things that the AI might just quit when it finds the first one and the second one. You might be pulling some completely incorrect data. Not just that, there's this thing called hallucination that AI tools have where not only is it giving you incorrect data, it's 100% sure that it's right, and it's going to keep telling you that it's right. You're going to say, no, it's not this. Say, no, you're wrong. It's going to be so sure of itself that you're going to start doubting yourself, which, again, not a good thing for a contractor to be. You probably have a better idea of what the rules are as opposed to what an AI is. Because at the end of the day, it's a black box system. You don't know the algorithm on the inside, just like we don't know why we see what we see when we scroll. We're getting lots of sports videos one day and then it's lots of cute animals. It's just, we don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. So yes, AI is a good tool, but it's not going to make you compliant. You can't use it as a partner. Um, and here's the cool thing. The reason I mentioned at the top of this that I used AI to kind of organize my notes is I went ahead and say, give me an example of why someone shouldn't use the notes. And I'm going to read you what it told me. It said, I've seen AI tools confidently tell users that a contractor was exempt from apprenticeship obligations on a project based entirely on a misreading of a spec document. That's not true. I've never seen that. I don't know if that happened. I was just testing out the AI because I use it every day and I do talk about some of the problems that we're having here to see if it could pull something. And that's not real. That's not a real thing that's happened. There are some more details there. I'll kind of not let you know to read you in, but to basically say that you have to be extra critical when you're using an AI tool, whether it's your chat GPT or you're building a machine learning algorithm to spot trends. You always have to build checks and you have to have humans involved in it in order to make sure things are going right. The tool is not ready for hands off yet. So the things you really got to be wary about, like I said at the beginning, don't be too overconfident. Do not trust your AI. It's a good tool. It can help get you started. Maybe if you don't know what a tool is that someone's using on site, sure, ask AI. But always double check. Ask maybe two different AI tools or something like that. So really the thing to be wary of is overconfidence in this black box system that no one really understands how it works.
Yeah, definitely. And, good advice outside of AI as well. Don't necessarily listen to the first answer you get from somebody. Basically do your research. Always take accountability for your portion of what it is you're doing. So, Nick, I was hoping that you might be able to speak then to, what are some possible legal ramifications for contractors is when it comes to AI. So Jason's saying, don't just trust the first answer you get. Maybe don't even trust any of the answers you get. But what if I do? What if I do take an answer that I've gotten from any of the current available tools and I went with it and now I'm wrong?
Well, you can't blame it on AI. AI is not going to get debarred from public work. So it's a reckless disregard. Uh, if you make good faith efforts to comply with prevailing wages and you make mistakes, the mistakes can be corrected and everybody can move on, right? If you don't care if you're compliant or you're not compliant, then that is a reckless disregard standard, and it could get you debarred. Uh, when it comes to prevailing wage compliance, if anybody does public work, you know that in most jurisdictions, whether it's state or federal, you have to disclose whether or not you've had prevailing wage violations in the past, and that also could be used as a factor to debar you from that current project that you're bidding on, and they'll go to the next, low bidder above you. So, uh, like I said, the classification stuff is a starting point. It definitely has to be verified. Everything has to be verified. Um, it's it's just not there for compliance. Like Jason said, you can type in some stuff and you get some pretty wacky answers. And like I always tell my kids, whatever point you want to argue with me, the internet has like no conscience. I could find the opposite. Somebody saying the opposite of what you're saying all the time. When you want to argue one point of a story. So AI is pulling all that. So it's not limited to some small little universe of information it's pulling. It's pulling stuff that might be written by morons, and it's giving you that as information. You know, somebody had a question for me on this. Are we answering questions?
Yeah, we're gonna take questions at the end, so we'll come back to that. But
All
yeah,
right.
thanks. But it sounds like we should maybe open this up to Facebook and see what all the experts on Facebook have to say about these questions. Talking about idiots in the room, huh? Wow. Anyway, so what about the impact maybe of recording a workday at multiple locations? Brittany, I thought you had maybe some thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, definitely with AI having the ability to, track where the employee is, just like you said, you can put in the GPS, but it's gonna, tell you, okay, that was 5 towns over when in actuality it was a block away. There are some, caveats to that. I think that there is a part of it that's already being used where we do have, geo-syncing data where a lot of time and attendance systems now will have a certain geolocation that's already put on. So we are seeing a part of that right now. But what we could start seeing is that that's becomes a little bit more expanded and has a little bit more capability, right? Where instead of it being like, okay, it's only this geolocation, if we see, okay, this employee's left this geolocation and they're currently moving in this direction and that is crossing into this workday boundary, does it automatically clock them in at that point in time? Those are things that we are going to start to see as AI becomes more of a day-to-day utilization tool in the not industry, but just in the population, right? Because we already have smartwatches. We are starting to see more of these like Google glasses that I was talking about, where people are starting to use AI in their day-to-day life. So what we're probably going to start seeing is that companies can start to tap into that data set to help them with their own internal processes of, okay, that employee said that he clocked in over here at job A, but in actuality, his phone location was over here in job C. That's a completely different jurisdiction, different contract, different classification codes, different wage determination entirely. Those are the types of things that we will probably start to see as time goes on with the AI as a whole, not just specific to the construction industry.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I know I've dealt with a lot of heavy highway contractors, and while it wasn't terribly common, there were certain projects that would cross determination locations. So
Yeah.
the same guy doing the same job, the same task, right? I've got a shovel and I'm digging here, and I move 5 feet to my left and I dig there, and I'm now subject to two completely different rates. And that's really
Yeah.
interesting. If these guys are wearing, wearable devices that can track their accurate location, that could very likely start a time tracking or at least some sort of verification for what they're writing down on their timesheets or clocking in on their timekeeping systems compared
Right.
to where their monitors are telling us they were. That's
Yeah.
really an interesting concept.
Yeah.
As
I
long,
mean, we
as
see
long as
that all
you're
the
accurate.
time, especially with working on even in the same project.
Yeah.
We will get where that project has two different wage determinations, right? They're a heavy and highway for part of that project, but they also have a building that they're putting on that project. So that building section is subject to the building determination. You can't use heavy and highway. So we see that as well, where that person might be picking up a shovel over here at this dynamic location, and that's heavy and highway because he's digging a trench outside. But he goes and walks 10 feet over to the left, and now suddenly he's digging a trench that's connected to the building. That is building construction. That is not heavy construction. So that is where we see that AI might not be able to help that, right? Because the AI is going to say, well, you're on the project, you're holding a shovel, you're digging a trench, therefore heavy. Well, in reality, he was over here doing the building. So that's where you're still going to need that foreman or that superintendent, somebody that's overseeing and says, well, he actually wasn't over there doing the heavy scope of work. He was actually building construction and doing work on the building for that period of time.
Right. Interesting. Very complex, and I mean, it's complex without any assistance, going back to the pen and paper timesheets,
Yeah.
let alone adding in the technology. So, Stephanie, how about this one for you? from a fringe benefit optimization standpoint, how could AI impact that?
I mean, it's a little bit different context than what we're talking about, but there's a lot of evidence-based research and stuff that's available on like predictable trends, how employees value and utilize benefits to help employers make good benefit choices for their employees, just based on demographics or what their employees value. And when I say optimize, I don't mean make it complicated, but make it deliver real value to your employees, since you have to spend those dollars. That supports your compliance component of it, but also can give you some visibility to, do your employees actually view them as valuable? Do they gripe about them? Do they complain about them? Can you use the dollars to be better spent for retention and attraction standpoint? I mean, I've seen it used in many different ways. And again, it's pulling, like when I used ChatGPT, I use it a little bit differently. I do knowledge learning with what I use, if it's ChatGPT or another AI tool. And then I do a lot of prompts. I want you to look at this study. I'm specifically wanting this type of information. And an interesting thing that I've done when it's maybe not giving me necessarily what I want or what I want to validate, I'll ask the tool, if I want to get this information and I want you to return these specific things, what type of prompts would I need to be using? And it does actually give you some good information back to you where you can refine, because it's all, I think, how you prompt the tool to get the responses that you're looking for. And citing, I want you to look at, Kaiser's healthcare, foundation evidence-based study that they've done, or go to healthcare.gov or different places like that, and then keep prompting. And like you guys were saying before, don't take the first response. It's giving me some strange information that I certainly would never share with anybody. But I think it can be used when you're talking about fringe optimization. It's really the value to the employees. You have to spend that money, so being able to give them something that they really want is a win-win for both employee and the employer. The one thing I will say about using AI tools, especially in the realm that I'm talking about it in, is you really need to, I wouldn't just go out and start doing it. You need to have data governance and privacy. There can be significant risk to just loading a bunch of information into an AI tool that's aggregated to look for predictability modeling and stuff. But if you start loading individual personal health information into a tool, that's going to violate their rights and probably the law. So there's some really important things when you're, I mean, in my world, we use it all the time, but employers can use it, but just develop probably a policy, or make sure that your staff that maybe would be using it are HIPAA trained, because that's a pretty serious infraction. So I'm sure that the legal people can speak to that as well. But I use it a lot. I have a little bit different opinion, I think, because just the way that I use it.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. It's like a whole new type of communication to learn, right? You have to ask it properly in order to even have a chance at getting a decent answer. I see things pop up all the time in terms of, how to optimize your use of ChatGPT, et cetera. What are the right questions to ask, and what are the wrong ones to ask? So it's like we have to learn a whole new language. Forget about French.
Said, like, what am I missing? What questions am I not asking that I should be? And it actually gives you some good information back, which is kind of crazy, but that's from my point of view.
Yeah, super interesting. So we've covered a lot of ground, and I want to just give each of you a final chance to wrap up our conversation with maybe any final thoughts. Maybe we can start. We'll go in the order of introductions. Brittany, do you have any other parting thoughts before we open it up to Q&A?
I think, it's a tool that's there. I think be very careful with being too reliant on it. I have done chat GPT searches before just to test it, and it's given me completely false information. So much so that I've found the code that it cited and said, well, this is what the code actually says. And it was quoting something from an old code that had been revised. So be very careful when you're looking at it and just taking it at face value.
Yep. Jason, how about you? Any parting thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic. I hope the tool continues to get better. The best use right now is in the force multiplier for the people you trust to do the work already. Give them AI tools to use, trust them that they know how to use them, check, double check, triple check your work. But just remember, it's not your partner, it's just a tool in your tool belt that you should be able to use.
Yep. How about you, Nick? Any thoughts before we open it up?
Same thoughts. If you have questions or are experts in this field that you can actually speak to and explain your situation, that can ask questions about your particular situation that AI doesn't. So, like I said, you want to play with it, play with it. It's not there to provide compliance, not even close.
Right. How about you, Stephanie?
Again, I mean, it's not a theorem. It's here. You can use the tools, but you need to use them wisely. And there's a lot of training that goes into, I think, how to use it properly. And it can be a powerful tool. It can help make really good, deformed, evidence-based decisions. But again, it's feeding it the correct information to output what it is that you're expecting, and always question it. I mean, I asked it a question the other day about the big beautiful bill that I knew it had actually happened, but I was curious what it was going to tell me about some provisions that had been put in the bill that I knew didn't pass, and it told me they passed, which they did not. So I mean, it gives some erroneous information. So
Yeah.
be careful.
Yep, definitely. That's a very good point. All right. Well, first, I want to thank you guys for being here, participating with us today, and answering all these questions. We're going to have a poll launched here, and then we're going to open up to some questions and answers. We already have some questions that have popped up. So we're going to give everybody just a minute to answer the poll questions, and then we'll start clicking through here. I know some of these questions came up, are already assigned to probably the most appropriate person to address them. A couple might not be, so we'll have to see who can answer for us. So while people are voting, let's start here. There's a question for Nick. Can you expand on the unfunded and getting approval? I don't know if I quite understand that part, but maybe you
I,
do.
yeah, I get what she's asking. So I mentioned that for vacation and holiday plans, the DOL last year passed regulations. They haven't issued new regulations since 1980, the Davis-Bacon programs. What ended up happening there is they considered vacations and holiday plans to be unfunded plans. Those are pay as you go. So most employers will just take your 2 weeks of vacation, they write it out of the general fund, they pay you 2 weeks of vacation, right? They continue your pay. Same thing for the holidays. The DOL, when they passed new regulations last year, required approval of these unfunded plans, and it's just for vacations and holidays. So it doesn't apply to health insurance and anything like that, or 401ks or pension plans. So if you provide vacations or holidays, they usually have to comply with certain things. They have to be trackable, so you have to be able to track the time that people are earning. They should be in a separated account apart from general funds of the company. So they'd like to see that you have put away money to pay the vacation and the health fund. Uh, you know, Davis Bacon in general requires contributions to be made to plans at least quarterly. So that would be a minimum requirement of how to fund those. Uh, the other requirement that they require is an accrual, some kind of accrual. So if you're doing both prevailing wage and non-prevailing wage work, those benefits should accrue on hours worked on both prevailing wage and non-prevailing wage, not just funded by the prevailing wage hours. And they want to review your policy. There's a website or an email that you can send your handbooks into. They review your handbook for your policy. They ask you a bunch of questions. If they approve your method of paying holidays and vacations, they send you an approval letter. Once you have this approval letter, you can take credit for vacations and holidays as long as you're complying with the same type of plan that you had approved, right? You can't change your plan after it gets approved. If you didn't get prior approval, they have said, the DOL has said, it will deny you credit if you take credit for those plans on current Davis-Bacon project. So if you take credit for it, you got to comply with it. You got to get approval. The Trump administration has not changed the rule. The rule was enacted when Biden was in office, and it's still there. So.
Interesting. It's good. Brittany, I think this one is for you. Can you recommend a reliable source of content that clearly spells out Davis-Bacon and state level prevailing wage compliance standards, particularly as it pertains to fringe credits for contractor provided benefits?
Yeah, so obviously, there are certain companies that specialize in that. Each state has its own rules and requirements, so it would really depend on what state you're working in. For example, New York has an annualization requirement for basically every single benefit you put in place, whereas other states do not have that. Some states only abide by the Davis-Bacon rules, and other states have their own prevailing wage laws. So it would be specific to what state you're working in. You can always reach out to us. We do work with contractors specifically. I do know that Alliant works with contractors and they do provide training calls. And so they do have seminars and webinars that I would definitely recommend if you had a larger, group that you wanted to attend. I would definitely recommend Alliance webinars that they present because they do cover quite a lot of the topics that you're looking for.
Cool. Thank you. This is an interesting one. Will AI help with cross-functionality of systems? For example, a specific general contractor might submit their certified payroll reports through elation systems or others through EMARs, et cetera. It would be nice if it bridged the gap between these systems and your payroll processors like ADP, Payroll for Construction, little plug for us, Paylocity, et cetera. Any thoughts, anybody?
I mean, the short answer there is yeah. I mean, it can definitely figure out how to do that. It's going to, again, take someone to help figure that out. If there is any Alliant clients on this call and you also use Foundation software, I mean, we're trying to figure out a way to plug us into them. So, that's something that we're actively looking at. So connecting all the disparate systems, I mean, one of the things I was thinking about before this call was how our government's never going to use AI correctly to give us the data we want. So we're still going to be relying on those outdated systems from them. So there's always going to be a need for us to bring in the data from the government system, which is always going to be behind the times, to maybe a more modern system that Alliant and other companies are building and using these days. So the answer is yes. I think there are AI tools out there. If you're looking for a specific recommendation, there are some automation tools out there. One is called Zapier. The other one is called Make. They both do a lot of great automation tools, and they can help bring data from, say, a Google Doc into, I don't know, Facebook. I don't know where you're putting your data. I'm trying to think of a fast example, and that's the first thing that came to mind. But I'm sure there's a smarter place you want to move data, like between ADP and your Google Sheets or something like that. So, yeah, definitely can do that.
Yeah, I think to piggyback on that, our system, our system was built on an open architecture model, meaning we work with any contractor, any payroll accounting system, it doesn't matter, any time tracking system. We wanted our system to be very open architecture. So what we do is we work within whatever payroll or accounting system the client uses, and we provide the data and the information in the way that they need it to be. We can use AI as a tool to kind of help us to navigate, like, okay, our system works in this way, their system works in this way. How can we work together? But I think it's really going to be on the back end, and the burden is really going to be more on the payroll companies and those compliance companies like EMARS, Elations, LCP Tracker, Foundation, Payroll for Construction, ADP. It's going to be on them to really use the AI tools, not really the contractors themselves, because in reality, you're punching the data into a system, it's spitting out data and putting it into something else. There's nothing that you can really do with AI. It's really going to be back end between the different companies. And that's something that we work with our partners with on a regular basis as well.
Great. I think we have time for maybe one, maybe two more questions. This one came in here just a little bit ago. What challenges do you foresee when it comes to reporting? Like, for example, certified payroll reporting and utilization?
I think that what we're going to start seeing is there are potentials where people are going to just say, here, put my payroll into a certified payroll report. And AI is going to take that and they're going to put data in where data should not be. And it's going to look very messy. We have a saying in our company, garbage in, garbage out. If you are putting in information that's incorrect, the system is not going to catch that. It has to come from you as a person catching that. I have had ChatGPT create a flyer for me, just a generic flyer for a event that I was holding. Half of the flyer was in gibberish and was in made up language. So if they start to look at the data that's on your payroll register, number one, you're giving out sensitive data from your employees. Number two, if they start mismatching numbers, transposing things, putting things in the incorrect area, you now have a big problem on your hands. And like Nick pointed out, the liability is yours. It's not ChatGPT's. It's not AI's. It is your liability. It's your risk. So I definitely would say don't use it to do your reporting. You need to be the one. If you wanted to ask it how to complete a certified payroll report, it might be able to give you the step-by-step instructions, right? But it really needs to come from you as the contractor, not allowing AI to do it for you.
Yeah, and that's where something like Foundation, like Payroll for Construction, right, with specialization in this space. Now, we can't guarantee that the rates you're plugging in for your pay rates and your fringes are the correct rates. That is on you, and that is something that maybe AI can assist with in locating what those rates should be. But again, it's on you to double check. But at least if you're using a system like ours, it can produce those reports for you in a variety of formats that are compliant with the various authorities that you're reporting to.
Yeah,
Right.
and Brian, our system, because our system works with the contractor and pulls those correct rates and fringe allocations, we can give them that information to put into Foundation software. So it helps them to ensure that they're paying the correct rates per the classification and taking the fringe allocation based upon their actual enrollment in each benefit. So that's how our system works hand in hand. And that's why we work so well with payroll providers.
Yep, that's great. Very good. Well, everyone, it is 2:56, and I think that we have pretty much come to the end of our time together. So for the attendees here that are still online, looks like there's 103 of you. Thank you so much for attending and for sticking around for the whole event. For the panelists here, I want to thank you guys again for joining us, making this possible for all of our audience to learn. It's a hot topic. And I know a lot of people get really excited and think it's going to make life super easy. And maybe it will someday. It just isn't going to be today, right? Still a lot of work we have to do, but it's nice to have tools that can assist us. One last question came up, and that's for me. Will we get a copy of the recording? Yes. If you've registered and you're sitting here, your email is on here. There will be a follow-up email that goes out once the recording is prepared. So you'll get a link to that. Just keep an eye out for it, and maybe keep an eye out in your spam mailbox as well in case it happens to go there. So again, to our panelists, Jason, Brittany, Nick, Stephanie, thank you so much. It's a pleasure working with you. And for the couple other Foundation employees behind the scenes that nobody gets to see all the time, Jen and Kara, we appreciate your hard work on this event as well. Until next time, thanks everyone.